What did your first line supervisor do that made you want to stay in the Army? Staff Sergeant Garrett Holloway made me want to quit in my first 6 months. The man was relentless. Every uniform inspection, he'd find something wrong. A loose thread, boots, not quite shiny enough, a wrinkle in my sleeve I couldn't even see. During PT, he'd run alongside me yelling corrections about my form while I was gasping for air. In the motor pool, he'd make me redo maintenance checks 3 times because good enough gets soldiers killed, Private Crane. I remember the smell of that motor pool, diesel fuel, grease, and the metallic tang of tools that had been used 1,000 times. My hands were always stained black no matter how hard I scrubbed. I was 19, away from home for the first time, and I felt like I couldn't do anything right. You thinking about quitting? Holloway asked me one afternoon. I was sitting on the bumper of a Humvee, and I'd been so deep in my own head I hadn't heard him walk up. I didn't answer, couldn't. My eyes were burning, and I refused to cry in front of him. I can see it in your face every morning, he continued, sitting down next to me. His voice was different, quieter, without that edge it usually carried. You show up, you do the work, but you're not here. Not really. The thing was, he was right. I'd enlisted because I didn't have money for college and my hometown had nothing to offer. But the Army wasn't what I'd imagined. It was harder, lonelier, more exhausting than anything I'd prepared for. Then my mom called. Stage 4, cancer. The doctors gave her 6 months, maybe 8 with treatment. I needed emergency leave immediately, but there was a problem. Our unit was deploying to Iraq in 3 weeks. The command was denying all non-essential leave requests. I filled out the paperwork anyway, took it to Holloway's office with hands that wouldn't stop shaking. He read it silently, his jaw working like he was chewing on something bitter. Request denied, he said finally, and I felt something inside me break. But here's what's going to happen instead. He pulled out his personal laptop, opened his email, and I watched him type a message to the battalion commander. I couldn't read the whole thing, but I caught phrases like compassionate grounds and soldiers' mental health and respectfully requesting intervention. That won't work, I said quietly. Sir, I appreciate it, but you're right, it won't. He closed the laptop. So I'm going to drive you to the airport myself. You're going to take 14 days to be with your family. I'll handle the deployment prep for your slot. When you come back, if you come back, we'll deal with whatever consequences there are. Together. I just stared at him. Sergeant, you could get Article 15 probably, maybe worse. He stood up, grabbed his keys. But your mom is dying, Crane, and you're 19 years old. Some things matter more than regulations. Now go pack a bag. The drive to Nashville Airport took 2 hours. We didn't talk much. He played old country music on the radio. I remember the sound of a steel guitar mixing with the hum of the truck's engine. At departures, he handed me an envelope. Inside was $800 cash. That's for whatever you need. Don't argue. Just take it. My mom died 6 days into my leave. I held her hand in that hospital room that smelled like antiseptic and flowers people had sent. I told her about the Army, about Holloway, about how maybe I'd found something worth staying for after all. She squeezed my hand once before she closed her eyes for the last time. When I got back to base, I walked straight into the company commander's office and confessed everything. Told him it was my idea, that Holloway had tried to stop me, that I'd forged the leave paperwork myself. The commander listened, his face unreadable. That's not what Staff Sergeant Holloway reported, he said finally. He took full responsibility, currently facing an Article 15 and possible reduction in rank. I felt sick. Sir, that's not— I know it's not true, Private. So does half the company. He leaned back in his chair. But here's what I also know. Holloway's been in for 11 years. He's the best NCO I have, and he was willing to sacrifice his career because he believed in doing the right thing for one of his soldiers. The Article 15 was dropped after 3 other senior NCOs wrote statements supporting Holloway, but the story spread throughout the battalion. Suddenly, soldiers who'd been planning to get out after their first contract were re-enlisting because they'd seen what real leadership looked like. I've been in for 16 years now, made sergeant first class last year. Every soldier I supervise hears the story about Holloway, and when they're facing something impossible, when they're ready to quit, I try to show them the same thing he showed me. Holloway retired as a command sergeant major, spent his last 3 years at the Soldier Support Center helping soldiers with family emergencies navigate the system. Turns out that one unauthorized leave taught him there were bigger battles to fight than the ones in the field. He created an entire program for compassionate leave advocacy that's now used Army-wide. They named it the Holloway Protocol. I went to his retirement ceremony, shook his hand, told him I wouldn't be wearing this uniform if it weren't for him. He just smiled and said, "You would have figured it out, Crane. You just needed to know that the Army takes care of its own, even when the paperwork says otherwise."